In the last few days, I've been deliberating on how to broach this topic, how to broach this subject. I have made actually a couple of videos that I've decided not to post because the subject that I'm attempting to communicate something that is so disturbing to me, and likely it is probably, if I don't do this the right way, I think that it could actually escalate something that I really don't want to be a part of. And I'll just sort of try to, I'm not sure if I'm going to post this, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to talk about this. And I want to, first of all, reference my feeling about YouTube and people on YouTube, the ineffectiveness that people have, I think, in terms of providing us with information. It is really quite irrelevant to me anymore unless there is a sense of self-analysis, understanding, self-reflection, to reflect on oneself, that underneath everything that I produce or that somebody else's comments or thoughts, ideas, if it lacks this basic self-reflection, this understanding that communicates to me you are struggling with your own inner war, with your own, the challenges we face as human beings within ourselves to become part of a solution, in a sense. In a sense, meaning that it's not directly related to the problem that we appear to want to solve, but it indirectly becomes part of the solution. Not sure how to exactly express this. It's like when I say, you don't have to do anything. When you recognize the severity of the problem with Fukushima, the fundamental recognition that it's a big problem is already a huge step towards becoming part of the solution. So for me to say you have to do this or have to do that, well, it may give you an idea. If I'm doing certain things that may also be something you would like to do, yeah, that makes sense. But for me to stand here and proselytize the solution is irrelevant. It doesn't work. What does work is for me to struggle in my own life to become part of this awareness, first of all. This is crucial. This is absolutely fundamental in having a shift that will occur. Now, this is my preamble, and it's my reflection on people on YouTube that I either admire or I ignore. It's based on their own inner struggle revealed, in a sense. And as a painter, there is a kind of connection to revealing. I think that whenever I produce a work, or when even somebody produces work on YouTube, it is a reflection of their struggle, no matter what. But what is important is to actually recognize within oneself that this represents my vulnerability, my struggle, whatever it is that I'm doing. You know, if you see a painting behind me, it is basically an admittance. Not of, oh, look at me, I'm so fabulous. No, it's me bringing another person into my life with on a level of revealing myself. Now, I'm not going to sit down and have a discussion about my own struggle with anybody on, you know, as a rule, but it is a fundamental understanding in an interaction between people that that's what's happening, which ties us to each other in the sense that there is a humility. Not a bravura, not a sort of holier than thou, kicking your ass kind of feeling. It's like it's a, between people of conscience, it's the way to be, that's all. Okay. So the topic that is now imposing itself on me within this feeling of humility, and I want to present this properly because I have been talking about my sense of where we are the state that I feel myself to be a part of, the larger picture, the picture that I feel myself to be a part of. I am a person, an individual within a larger context. I have my own personal life proceeding day to day, and then there's also the larger picture of many more people like me participating in an event, in something that I have, what I have chosen to do is to identify this age that is the larger picture. It gives me a sense of gratification. It makes me feel that by being able to see the bigger picture, not just myself and me, I have called this the Age of Fission. And what does that mean to me personally? Well, for one thing, it's a monumental age. It is a monumental age. That is, it's not, I don't say this lightly. It's kind of like reading an epic novel, something that you really appreciate and get a great deal from on all different levels, whether you go to philosophical characters, religious characters, artists, it doesn't matter. The work that is being presented encapsulates a bigger picture. And we feel energized by having that being exposed to a person's insight in that way. And it's through their own struggle. I'm convinced that the greatest insight comes through a person's own struggle revealed and to some extent externalized. It can never be totally externalized, but there it is, okay? I hope this is making sense. So being in the Age of Fission, what does that mean to me? And having been in the, for example, in the Bronze or the Iron Age, the distinction between the two is that iron outstrips the strength of bronze, and the soldiers who had iron were victorious over the soldiers that were carrying bronze. So in the same sense, by identifying something of that magnitude, it changes the playing field substantially. It changes the battlefield substantially. And here's my comment that is, I'm very sensitive to saying it in these terms. And what I'm going to say is that my sense of this age is it brings in it is acting like a funnel. It is acting like a sort of central. It is attracting to it what has been developing over a longer period of time, but with a much greater intensity. And we have among the people that are trying to get rid of this horrible industry on Earth called nuclear power, and all the byproducts that it produces, the thousands of unwanted elements, toxic elements that is produced by this industry. I have called it a criminal syndicate, because if you can produce these deadly isotopes that saturate the environment, it is a criminal activity because it is an attack on all life. And this is where I'm going to part somewhat with some of my fellow humans of conscience, where I don't see this as an extinction event. And what I think is much more prevalent within this age is not the extinction, but I would call it, and some people may say you're just nitpicking, but I think it's very important to call it what it is, and I think it's an extermination. And this is difficult to say, because if I'm right, if I'm understanding this right, the age that I feel that we're in, it is not only a haphazard occurrence where, geez, you know, they all went kind of wonky, the beings, somebody, if we get through this somehow, that 1,000 years or 100 years from now, people that are left say those guys were real bunch of nutbags doing what they did to invent this technology that destroyed or attempted to destroy everything. What is more crucial for me is right now that this is by design, by intent, which is why I choose to call it an extermination. And this is odd and peculiar to understand, because why would anyone want to do away with themselves? It's like the idea of a suicide, the desperation contained within an act that is self-destructive. Whatever that is that motivates someone, I cannot really place myself in that position. But interestingly, as we have come along, as we have developed over the last 6,000 years in culture, in civilization, which I have also said does not exist. Civilization is a misnomer. I think the culture of death covers the dissertations I've done on YouTube. And this is I'm reflecting my own process, how I think about this, why I make the paintings I do. It's an internal kind of realization. And I'm quite distressed by this notion that we are part of an extermination that will actually include the exterminators. And the exterminators is a straightforward concept where, you know, we've had in history, we've had camps that were set up in order to eliminate a segment of the population. They were extermination camps in Germany, for example. Interestingly, concentration camps apparently were invented by the British. So this is not a foreign concept, or it's not just a German phenomenon under the Nazis. This is something quite well understood worldwide, whether it's in Cambodia under Pol Pot or Stalin and the gulags. These are concepts. The idea of extermination is not foreign to our concept. And extermination considers that there is somebody exterminating. It's not extinction in the sense that, well, maybe 65 million years ago, a meteor maybe hit the Earth and a lot of life was lost. Now, it's interesting, why did only the big guys get lost? Why only the big, Tyrannosaurus 10-foot story Rexes get lost and everything else was left alone? It doesn't make sense, okay, whatever that was. Anyway, extinction suggests a kind of abnormal but natural phenomenon. And we're not in an extinction, we're in an extermination. And the tools that are being used, the cyclone gas, in a sense, and this is an indictment of an industry, that the harshest way I could talk about this, and which is why I've hesitated to publish, is that this criminal syndicate is using as a tool towards this end the isotopes, the man-made nuclear isotopes from a chain reaction to complete something that started actually, I would say it started 6,000 years ago under the Egyptian rulers, and the continuation. They passed the baton on to everybody else, the despots, and we as a population have been seduced, coerced, fooled. We are complicit. We reject that part in all of us that desires to be alive. We still think that, yes, we want the pleasures of this experience, but somewhere have capitulated to this time. The Age of Fission began when the two guys, Strassman Hahn, definitively invented this process, this technology, splitting the atom. Doesn't exist anywhere else in the universe as far as smart science is concerned. And I think this distinction, and like I say, I'm not sure if I'm going to publish this, because if this gets into the public consciousness that we're not just facing an extinction, which is harsh. I mean, the idea of that, when you see 160 whales down in New Zealand beaching themselves and people scratch their heads, oh geez, maybe they got hurted by all the sharks who are trying to get and eat them, right? Yes, of course. These animals are in total distress. And what could cause such distress? That they are in contact in some way or other with the destruction. They understand the destruction. It's a gesture of complete and utter total despair. That's how I see this beaching of whales all over the planet. And it's not just happened in the Pacific, in the North Pacific, it's happening in the southern part of the ocean as well now. It is an insidious development. And where are the luminaries of our age? Even people like Alan Watts, who speaks about Buddhism and the insights that he brings to the pillars of our structure, like Jung explaining the depth of someone like Carl Jung, who understood our psyche, but failed to identify the age. They failed to identify the age and try at least to warn people like myself, who would be sensitive at some point or other. Maybe I was a little slow on this, but I would be sensitive. Where are these luminaries that we hold up? Especially people that were privy to this sense of psyche, of a connection, of a larger picture. The archetypal beings that Jung discussed. He was alive when they had discovered or when they had invented this industry. He was there, maybe not in the way that we're experiencing it now. And I'm not disparaging. I'm saying that where are the luminaries? Where are the people that are on our side, understanding and expressing this? And I totally discard the pop culture, popular culture when it comes to people that are visionaries or luminaries in their field, like actors. And there is no one that has come out and definitively said, people, we're in big trouble here. From this point, on this subject, not Neil Young saying the Athabasca oil sands. Yes, knock yourself out on the Athabasca oil sands, but again, it's a pimple on your face compared to an extermination happening with all the toxic materials by chemical industries, pharmaceuticals, agros, but most of all, an industry called the nuclear industry, distributing this material all over, all over. It's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. And will be a lot more as more of these aging plants begin to totally hemorrhage. It's somewhat contained. It's not contained, but it's somewhat contained as to what it could be, like Fukushima. This is when I woke up, I understood this. And I'm gonna let this be a little longer dissertation because I'm wrapping up. I don't want to sound like a fringe lunatic on this, and I wish to be wrong. I truly want to be wrong on this. And I would love to, like I say, live in mud huts and wood shoes, you know, if that's the sacrifice I have to make to get rid of this, but it's not going to help. I mean, we have the technology, we are who we are right now, and we have to attempt to deal with this. But we can't deal with this until we recognize what it is we're facing. And there is a difference between calling it an extinction and what I'm saying it's an extermination, because it's a lot more pointed. It's a lot more directed. It's a lot clearer. And where would this come from then? This would be the next question. And I do not have the proof or insight into the specifics of who might or might not be involved in this plan of destroying all life on Earth. Because this is the only conclusion. When you make isotopes, tiny little things that you can fit 1 billion on the head of a pin, and they're everywhere, that have the effect over possibly generations, maybe not tomorrow or in 10 or 50 years, but over the next 100, 200 years, this material that cannot be eradicated with any technology we have at this point. Hopefully, you know, somebody will come up with a solution in the next short while to mitigate and protect some of life that is still existing on this planet. Who is behind this? I have my suspicions, and I think the people, the usual suspects that everybody names, are not the primary culprits. And if you watch, let's say, a documentary on the Kennedy assassination, you see how that web extends into society, all the way into high places in government, the mob, industry. It's all connected. This is a web, and money is not the objective of this group. There is a fundamental sadism. There is a fundamental need to indulge the darkest part of ourselves that we all may, and to some extent, are capable of imagining, but choose not to do because we know it's the worst thing that you could do to delight or benefit in the suffering or death of others. And I think this is what's underneath this extermination, that we in some way as a collective have been taken over by this feeling, by this nastiness that we accept or conform to or are complicit with or are silent about. Just like they said when they came for the Jews, I said nothing. When they came for the gays, I said nothing. When they came for the artists, I said nothing. And then they came for me and there was no one left to speak on my behalf. And I think it's a case where with almost 7 billion people on this planet right now, which is curious to me, to have such a surge of wanting to be alive right now under such circumstances, and that this has ratcheted up over the last 6,000 years to the point where literally there is now a technology that could actually eradicate all life on this earth. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying that there is, in my estimation, there is a clear and present danger by this cartel. And this cartel is a tool, is an arm of a much more sinister bunch who understand this, but are willing to see it through because within, this is my explanation, within their nature, this is such a dark, deep-seated, ugly nature, the sadistic thing of delighting in the pain and hurt. And I think the greatest high this bunch would have is to see everything gone on this planet and get an incredible sense of what? Exhilaration, like the idea of the fox and the scorpion, the story. The fox and the scorpion are sitting at the edge of the water and the scorpion wants to get to the other side and says to the fox, listen, can you swim across? I can't swim across the water. And the fox says to the scorpion, why would I let you on my back to swim across? You're a deadly animal. And the scorpion says, no, don't worry about it. I'm not going to hurt you. I want to get to the other side. And then they're in the middle of the water of the river and the scorpion stings the fox dies, and the fox says, why'd you do that? Now we both die. The scorpion says, it's what I do. And I think this is a fabulous analogy of the group that is behind this. And they would sacrifice themselves just to get the thrill out of this idea. And this is a very disturbing topic. And like I say, I'm not sure if I'm going to post this, but there is a big difference between extinction and extermination, because extermination indicates intent and malicious, the malice behind this, that extinction for me doesn't. So I hope this clarifies my position.